Okay, in this lesson I want to take a basic look at string skipping. A lot of people say to me, what arpeggio shapes do you like to use when using this technique? So what I'm here to do is tell you the positions that I like to use and then show you how you can mess about with it and create musical examples just to get your head around the basic idea of what string skipping is. I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory. You're just skipping over strings, but what that does is that creates like a wider intervallic value in what you're playing, and it's a slightly more accessible way of playing arpeggios, I think, to certain types of sweep picking. I mean, basically the reason why I got more into string skipping for certain arpeggios is because my sweep picking early on was fairly hard to develop, doing downward sweep picking and upward sweep picking. So when I discovered that you could do string skip versions of the same arpeggios, I was a lot happier. But this is the kind of example of what I'm talking about. I mean, this is a standard sort of sweep pick, traditional shape arpeggio. I mean, that has its own type of sound and its own benefit within anyone's playing. You see players like Yngwie Malmsteen using that shape a hell of a lot and being incredibly efficient at it. But I just sort of found out that for various different players that I was into growing up, that string skipping was another technique that you could use. So instead of doing that same shape, it's even slow. I struggle with doing that even now. But yeah, you just make it a lot simpler by playing this. Okay, so that's just 14 on the D, 12, 16 on the G. Then this is where the string skipping comes in, over the B string, play 12 and 15 on the high E string. See, the benefit of that as well is being able to, you can slide into probably a more accessible traditional shape. So you could have okay, so that's instantly something that's, you're playing 2-octave arpeggios and you're not really having to break a sweat or play anything that's particularly difficult. It's just kind of knowing that these things exist really is kind of half the battle with a lot of guitar playing. So yeah, if you wanted to try that, that's 14 on the D, and just go up that shape that we looked at. Then slide up to 19, 15 on the high E, 17B, 16, slide down to 12 on the G. Then you've got 14, 12, 14 on the D to start again. Okay, so that's one particular arpeggio sequence that, that's a very basic form. Obviously you can sequence that a bit more and, jump the notes around, but we'll get to that later on. Okay, here's a major string skipped arpeggio which we can do. We're going to do this in D major, so it's going to look like this. Okay, so yeah, I mean, again, if you were going to look at a slightly more traditional way of being able to play that, you'd probably play something like this. But again, it's slightly more awkward later on to start sequencing arpeggios like that unless you're incredibly efficient at sweep picking. I just find, string skipping is a slightly more accessible way of being able to just manipulate these scales as you see fit. So okay, so that's the shape. Again, if you want to use that idea of moving into a more traditional shaped arpeggio higher up, say like the next octave, you can do the same thing as what we did with the E minor arpeggio. Okay, so looking at that, we've got 12 on the D, then 11 to 14 on the G, then 10, 14 on the high E, up to to 17 on the high E, back to 14 on the high E, 15B, and then 14G, slide down to 11 on the G, then 12, 11, 12 on the D, and then start again. So again, you know, just kind of improvising there a little bit, but you can start to get a little glimpse of the sort of thing that you can do with sequencing some of these arpeggios. Instead of playing them straight up, straight down, you can kind of go back on yourself and do some variations. We'll look at that again, like I said, later on. And right, so the next position, or the next type of arpeggio, really, so we've covered minor, major, and we're going to look at a diminished shape, which is going to look like this. Okay, so I mean, I played that in reverse, but if you were going to do it like all the other ones and start on the D string, it would look like this. Okay, so that's 13 on the D, then we've got 11 to 14 on the G, then 13 and then 14, sorry, 11 and then 14 on the high E string. There we go. The great thing about diminished as well is when you string skip is everything's the same on the G string as well as the high E string. So it kind of makes everything a little bit smoother and a lot easier to get around, because all you've really got to worry about is keeping your fingers equal when you're moving, and then everything that you're ready to play on the high E string, you're ready to play on the G string as well. So that's quite handy for when you start to apply other techniques like tapping, for example, because you can then add in the tap notes at the kind of next position that you would play if you were going to just be using your left hand. So instead of just having, you could play. You know, and you can start to come up with some, you know, fairly cool ideas just with using that one idea. You know, you're just hammering on and then tapping the 17th fret, and that's it, and then just keeping the left hand the same. So again, you know, it's something cool that you can do, and you can move that around as well. You know, so you can kind of get used to, you know, doing that, but like I said, with diminished, you haven't really got to worry too much about, oh, you know, where am I going? You just maybe try and use your sort of peripheral vision a little bit when doing that kind of stuff, but the concept behind it is pretty simple to grasp, I think. So yeah, so as a recap, the three sort of positions that I like to use with string skipping are this. And, you know, again, trying to keep things musical when practicing. If that's all that you can really, you know, do at this stage, is just kind of go up and go down. Just try and make sure that it's nice and even and it's nice and clean, because there's no shame in doing it properly. You know, it doesn't matter if you can't play it like 200 beats per minute or whatever. You know, anything that you play on the guitar, as long as you play it well and you play it clean and it's in time, is, even if it's just a bend, it's still going to be way better than sounding like you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, you can, you know, really try and practice this stuff and get good at it. But as I say, you know, the emphasis, I mean, I play stuff that's, you know, fast, and sometimes, you know, technically it's a little bit ridiculous now and again, but there is normally a simple concept behind what's going on, and it's just the execution of it. But having said that, these lessons and everything on this academy doesn't have to be played at a million miles an hour. You know, all this stuff is good training and good, you know, building up your kind of musical vocabulary, and, you know, being able to just view the guitar in a different way, you know, trying to come up with your own ideas. So yeah, I mean, you know, they're the simple sort of like shapes, but I mean, a few examples of how you can sequence that would be something like this. Okay, so you know, that's sequencing starting from the traditional arpeggio. So there's a little bit of upward sweeping in there, you know, just to kind of keep the notes nice and even. So, yeah, I mean, I'd just like to say that, you know, if you're having trouble following any of this stuff, then there are tabs and notation that are part of this site as well, so you can go back and you can follow these lessons on the tab as well. But, you know, this is just to give you a load of ideas that you can take away. Let's have a look at a major version of that. Okay, and taking a last look at a sequence that you can use using the diminished shape is going to look like this. Okay, so again, it's a nice little sequence that you can practice over and over again. Again, you know, there's going to be tab to support this, but I'll try and play this as slow as I can just so you can get the sequence. And let me just play that kind of more up to speed so you can get an idea of where you could probably go with it. So yeah, loads of fun to be had with playing those ideas, but those sequences and everything have just come from those three basic shapes that we started out looking at in this lesson. So hopefully you can start to see how, you know, if you just take a basic idea, how you can really progress it and make something that's pretty cool sounding that, you know, will pretty much blow everyone away. So yeah, I'd just say work on those basic ideas, and then when you have them down, try and come up with some of your own sequences. But you know, maybe look at the ones I've shown you first, and then it'll give you some ideas of what to do and what direction to go in with using string skipping.